Am I on? Yes? No? Oh, yes. Oh. Hi, everybody. To all my pals out there in TV land tuning in. By the way, for those of you who tuned in at 7, expecting to see me partake in the congregational dance, I apologize. Actually, as a child, on the black and white little TV that we had, I learned to dance by watching Soul Train on Saturday mornings. Of course, my family didn't observe Shabbat. We didn't even know what that meant. So soul, yeah. But the steps were different, I have to tell you. Okay, normally, the Monday night presentations are me addressing all these questions and answers that have been given to me, well, at least the questions, in the weeks preceding my coming here to beautiful downtown Brandon, Florida. But events in Israel have been moving at a breakneck pace. So by the time I flew over to the US, we already had this ceasefire / hostage deal. What's up with that? Not only with Hamas. Can you make the lights a little brighter in my eyes? I'm just curious. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'll be fine. I'll just look down at Pastor Tikva. It's gonna be okay. We have the alleged ceasefire with Hezbollah, and then last Wednesday, President Trump came out with his latest plan. I say latest plan because it was on January 28th, 2020. You can check me on this, fact check me. He came out with the deal of the century. I'll get to that in a moment. And then, of course, today, you have Hamas saying that Israel allegedly violated the ceasefire and they're holding back on releasing our hostages. The first thing our Minister of Defense did was cancel leave for all soldiers posted in and around Gaza. So, do you know what? Why don't we just hop on in and see where it goes? Okay, so the ceasefire deal. It's a bad deal. It's a really, really bad deal. This was a deal that was on the table almost a year ago. Between pressure from the Biden administration and pressure from incoming, at that time, President Trump, we took the deal. And the thing that's amazing is people's understanding of things doesn't shift from the narrative that they learned on TikTok in 10 seconds. Perfect example. We see what our hostages being released look like. But people don't change the narrative. So let me be very frank with you guys, more so than usual. Not. Yes, there was an attempted genocide in and around Gaza. Yes, there was starvation in Gaza. The attempted genocide was against us, and the starvation was also against us. Isn't it amazing? You see what after the Shoah, after the Holocaust, were referred to as Musulman, the skeletons of human beings depleted by starvation and exhaustion, what they looked like. And then you see the staged release of the hostages with the Hamas terrorists looking great, man. And by the way, if Gaza was experiencing a genocide, if it was all leveled, as President Trump insists that it is, where did they get all those cleanly pressed uniforms? Where did they get all those signs made? Those big banners. What, did they outsource them to Kinko's? I mean, what is going on? The world has gone insane. So Israel took this deal because what is being used against us is our humanity. We cannot bear the thought that our men, women, and children are suffering this way, that are being tortured day in and day out. And the world doesn't care. The Red Cross has never visited them a single time. The UN has never, you know what? I heard someone say something once, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant, that this war could have been over by the 8th of October, a day later, if the UN would have stood up and said, you must release all the Israeli hostages. You must put down your weapons, or the entire world will boycott you. If you remember, we had the sympathy of the entire world about 3 or 4 days. We were being denounced by the United States government before we even put a single soldier in Gaza. And then remember all the warnings. You can't go into Rafah. You can't this, you can't that. All the weapons that were held back. And you know what's really interesting about all this? There have been demonstrations in Israel. Demonstrations against our government, as if our government was holding the hostages. There are some people who say, make a deal at any cost. Now let me explain what the cost is to you. Gilad Shalit, an Israeli soldier, was taken prisoner and dragged into Gaza, and he sat there for over 5 years. To get him released, we freed 1,000 terrorists, including Yahya Sinwar, the evil mastermind behind this whole thing. You can trace directly from that event to what we're dealing with now. Hezbollah. Hezbollah is in effect the de facto controlling element of the country of Lebanon. So the first date for our withdrawal from southern Lebanon is passed. And from what the Israeli press is saying now, particularly the Hebrew language press, we're not likely to meet the deadline to pull out. Why? Because the Lebanese army, which is supposed to, supposed to make sure the terrorists don't attack us, they haven't taken up positions because they're part and parcel of the whole thing. So whether the ceasefire with Hamas is going to continue, we don't know. I mean, literally, as of hours ago, it appears that it's broken down, but that's likely to be another ploy from Hamas. Again, they released 3 walking skeletons just days ago, and that creates additional pressure on us, because anyone who has a relative in Gaza now is saying, oh my God, my son, my daughter, my husband, they're not going to come out alive. I haven't heard a peep from anywhere in the world, any government anywhere, talking about one of the hostages, Eli Sharabi. His wife and 2 teenage daughters were murdered. He's now, after almost 16 months, being held a hostage by those savages, comes home to find out that his family is gone. His brother had been kidnapped and killed in Gaza. Do you realize they're still holding bodies that they took back of civilians and soldiers that they killed on October 7th? So the ceasefire deal is bad. Now, I don't want to leave you tonight with this feeling that, like people say to me, so Hanoch, if you were prime minister, what would you have done? Nah. There would have been no negotiations. We would have gone, we would have gathered as many Gazans together, we would have plucked out the terrorists and put the civilians to the side. By the way, there's plenty of room. Not only in Gaza, but the biggest wall holding in Gaza is on the Egyptian border. Egyptians don't want them. But here's the thing. This is really the astounding element to all of this. you have to go for the head of the snake. They get their strength from Iran. So what I would have done, and some of our leadership had suggested this, however, not our prime minister, I would have, now understand, after the last ballistic missile attack from Iran, when we retaliated, we took out 90% of their air defenses. They're basically laying there. I would have taken out their oil export. I would have told them, unless the hostages are all released, we are going to crush your country. That's the only way to have done it. We didn't. We have a tremendous crisis in Israel in leadership, military and political. Hopefully we'll be able to address that. Okay, so with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, we don't know what's going to happen. Hezbollah was incredibly powerful, far more powerful than Hamas, and we did everything that we did wrong in the south with Hamas, we did right in the north with Hezbollah. Our military planning was perfect. Would anyone like to order a pager from Israel? Oh. The Trump plan. Wow. If you were sitting there watching this on TV and can tell me that you weren't surprised, I would say, liar, liar, pants on fire. Even Bibi Netanyahu was standing there going, there was one line that President Trump should have said, though, maybe at the beginning of his talk or at the end of his talk, but what I was listening for was him to say, welcome to Fantasy Island. There is no way on earth that this plan can work. And let me tell you why. First of all, there are those of you who will say, Hanoch, you've been an Israeli for too long already. You don't understand President Trump. He's the master negotiator. He says this and means that to get everyone to the middle. And you know what? There was a hint of that with America's Secretary of State. Marco Rubio, you guys ever heard of him? It's Florida, man. He said, well, if the nations in the Middle East don't like the Trump plan, let them come up with a better one. So I thought, well, maybe there's something to it. Until I was listening over the last 2 days to President Trump's follow-up statements about he's going to do this, he's going to do that, no, they can't return. By the way, isn't it amazing that the reason they're saying the Gazans, and I'm not going to use that term Palestinians, ain't no such animal. The Gazans can't leave because this is their homeland. They can't be kicked out of their homeland. Wait a second. They still maintain refugee status. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. I'm sorry, I may be confused. I read right to left, so, but how can you be a refugee, a displaced poor refugee, and have a homeland that you're living in at the same time? Okay. The other thing that you'll notice is that the number of Gazans changes almost daily. First there's 2.2 to 2.3 million. Then President Trump, and I would back the numbers he's using, is 1.8 million. Again, having grown up in the Bronx, I'm mathematically challenged. That and other reasons. That's 500,000 people. Oops. How many is it? They lie. It's amazing. It's astounding. And the world just kind of like, okay. Okay, so here's the problem. So President Trump's idea is going to clear everyone out. And he says he's going to pressure Egypt and Jordan to take them. And he's talking about Somalia, and he's talking about Indonesia, and he's talking about everywhere else in the world. Okay? Put that aside. We'll come back to it in a moment. And he's going to create the Riviera. When I'm back in the summer, I think we're going to do this in Hebrew. Possibly en español. I don't know. The English clearly is not working out. So we've got to come up with an alternative. Okay. He's going to create the French Riviera of the Mediterranean. And it's going to be amazing, and it's going to, okay. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, y'all may not remember that up until the late 1970s, Lebanon was the French Riviera of the Mediterranean. Until their civil war took down that country. That's number one. Number two, where in the world is the logic that a group of people start a savage, genocidal attack on the Jewish people and get rewarded with all new housing, jobs, industry development? I don't get it. By the way, where's the world effort to rebuild all of our communities that were destroyed, where our people were burned alive? No one's talking about it. So the question is, well, yeah, but they're going to be gone. They're going to disappear. The residents of Gaza will be settled elsewhere. And President Trump is like, they'll have a good life, and it'll be peaceful, and it'll be wonderful. It wasn't, if you see pictures of Gaza prior to October 7th, 2023, it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. No, none of this nonsense, open air prison. They had hotels, they had beachfront property, it's gorgeous. It was their hatred of the Jew, their need to shed our blood, and they keep saying it. They promise more October 7th, so we're going to build them Trump Towers? What do you think? There's going to be, Beit Tehila, Gaza City? I mean, Chabad of Rafiach? It ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. Because, and I'll tell you why. Besides the fact that people don't want them. Because I guess the Americans should bribe them. Maybe tied in with a 1987 episode of The Golden Girls. By the way, this is your homework assignment. When you get home tonight, type in Palestinians, Greenland. Because in a 1987 episode of The Golden Girls, someone mentioned, they called in the radio station to give them the idea for peace in the Middle East, to give the Palestinians, not my word, theirs, Greenland. So when I was hearing over the last few weeks, wait a second, is that what they're thinking? No, I don't think that's what they're thinking. But President Trump says this is going to be accomplished without any American troops. You're going to get 1.8 million people to leave without any American troops. And understand something, there are no innocents in Gaza. No innocent people in Gaza. It's not. They elected Hamas. Did you know that? Hamas is the duly elected representatives of the people of Gaza. They train the little kids to hate Jews. Every apartment that our troops had to go in and search for weapons, by the way, as I've shared with you many times, they were easy to find. You go into the kids' room, move the cribs, and below is where they stored the RPGs, the rocket-propelled grenades. Okay? And many had items stolen from the Jewish communities that they had destroyed. After the Hamas terrorists came in 2 waves, they were followed by a 3rd wave of civilians who raped, robbed, burned, chopped off heads, the whole thing. And they filmed it on their GoPro cameras. So I have no idea what President Trump is actually thinking. I'm willing to venture that that next step, that next phase of thought isn't there yet. Did he say this to provoke opinion discussion? I mean, what was brilliant about it is he threw his ideas of 5 years ago out the window. And that's when I remind you. January 28th, 2020, he announces the deal of the century. Why do I remember the date? Not just because it was a week or so ago, because since he was doing that, Mike Clayton and I started the Israel Update. describing what this was, what this wasn't. And for 5 years in a row, we've been doing it. So thanks to President Trump in his first term. But the idea was to create a Palestinian state, not my term, in most of Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, what the Americans call the West Bank, and Gaza, connected from the southern hills of Hebron to Gaza by a tunnel. What could go wrong with a tunnel? Come on. So that was the original Trump plan. He's gotten much smarter, but at least is considering other ideas. Israel is faced with multiple security challenges right now. First of all, are we actually winning this war? Maybe yes, and sadly, maybe no. We have accomplished as much as we have based on the heroism of our men and women who have sacrificed so much. You know, you don't see it in the English language media as much. You know, you read and you see how many killed in action. Most people don't then go on to see how many wounded, let alone watch the videos, mostly in Hebrew, but not all, of those who've lost limbs. And I was watching this soldier working out. He's lost both legs and most of one arm, and he's practicing punching. I mean, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Iran. Iran remains a major threat, not only to us in Israel, because remember, in their eyes, America is the big Satan. We're only the little Satan. And they promise, all the jihadists are very clear about this. When they're finished with the Saturday people, they're coming for the Sunday people. Jihad is coming to your town. Look at New Orleans a few weeks ago. This may seem like a blip on the radar. It was, it's never happened before. Never? Fort Hood? I remember this. So we've got Iran. It's very clear that President Trump doesn't want to launch a strike against Iran or condone us for doing that. We also don't have the capacity to destroy their underground nuclear facilities. Let me explain. Not only were the bunker buster bombs held up by the Biden administration, but there are much bigger ones, much, much bigger ones. We don't have the kind of planes that could carry that. Our F-35s, our F-16s can't hold that weight. Do I see Israel launching a nuclear strike against Iran with our alleged nuclear weapons? No. So it's a big dilemma. With Syria having fallen, the government of Syria, we've got a new group of jihadists running Syria. Syria is not only on our border, but borders Turkey. Turkey is now talking about sending units to Syria. Turkey is a very powerful country. It is a NATO member, armed to the teeth. You'll be hearing a lot more about Turkey as time goes on. Or now they call it Turkey. I don't know if you've, look it up. Because Erdogan, the fascist dictator of Turkey, said that he was feeling bad that if anyone Googles his country, it first pulls up, Turkey, and like, gobble, 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 I can't believe people actually sit up and say these things. Lebanon. Lebanon had 150,000 missiles. We, through perfect planning, this did not pick up much in the English language press, but we had planes in the air when they began, because they had a lot of it stored within mountains that opened up. We got them right as they opened up. So we wiped out much of that. Now, they also had been resupplied through Syria. Syria and Lebanon don't get along. It's not just us they hate. So we don't know what's going on with that. And I'm going to mention another country that's going to be a big problem in the coming years. Egypt. Egypt is an ally of the United States of America and is chock full of all kinds of the latest American weapons. They recently moved an enormous amount of tanks into the Sinai facing Gaza, which is in violation of their peace agreement with Israel. Why does Egypt need so many tanks and so many planes? Who is their enemy? Do you know when their army trains and maneuvers, it's always a projected attack against Israel? As we say, back in Israel in Hebrew, no bueno. That's not good, guys. Okay, now you hear all kinds of things going on. The two-state nonsense, the two-state delusion is dead. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it's not going to be resurrected. In Israel, a number of you have contacts in Israel, besides me. And sometimes you hear things from them and you believe it, and it's not factually based. Let me give you a couple of examples without pointing fingers and naming names. Israel took over the buffer zone in the Golan Heights between us and Quneitra. We have troops in southern Lebanon. So you've got people saying, here it is, Greater Israel. We are expanding the borders of Israel to fit into the biblical promised land. Remember those commercials when we were kids? Just say no to drugs. I mean, it's nonsense. Do you know that Israel sat in southern Lebanon between 1984 and 2000 until our bizarro prime minister at the time, Ehud Barak, a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, pulled us out overnight? By the way, it was Barak who came up with this brilliant idea that still governs the IDF to this day, although it's changing. It was the idea that we were never going to fight a major conventional war again, like we did in the Yom Kippur War, October 1973. So the IDF would need less tank divisions, less artillery divisions, and we could stop producing munitions in Israel because we could always buy them from our American friends. And what we would create would be a smaller, smarter IDF. 4 years later, 2004, the second war in Lebanon breaks out, and we found that we could not win the war via air power alone. But the guys leading the IDF and our government didn't do a thing about it. And that's why we do not have enough tank divisions. For instance, they were recently going to open up a training division, women-only tankists. By the way, there's an amazing story on October 7th of a women's tank crew and what they did. But we had to cancel the course because we don't have enough non-damaged tanks in all of Israel. We have a shortage of manpower. We are now focusing on producing more and more of our own munitions. Because I got to tell you, the Trump administration looks like it's going to be very good for Israel. But the Trump administration ain't going to be forever. And after what y'all have experienced in the last 4 years, you never know, God forbid. Again, still narratives. People are buying the idea that there were girls, teenage girls, dancing in Gaza. By the way, all with nice clothes. None of them looked like they had missed a single meal in their life. And they're all dancing, that they're going to slit the throats of the Jews. And the world is just sitting there going, la, 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 la. It's amazing. Are we going back to war? It's a balancing act within my government. I know most people that I speak to do not like me to share the real Benjamin Netanyahu, because you have an image in your mind that you want to hold on to. But his focus is staying in power. So he'll say things. He's not a right-wing, this is not a right-wing government. He's not a right-wing prime minister. He's a centrist. So he caters to the right wing when it's good for him. He caters to the ultra-Orthodox for their votes. I know probably about a year and a half ago, some of you saw what appeared to be that Israel would now be drafting the ultra-Orthodox community. Ain't gonna happen. I'm telling you right now, it's not gonna happen. 21% of our population is not eligible for the draft. Isn't it astounding? A country like ours that has a manpower shortage. Do you know we have reservists that have served over 350 days in the last year and a half? Imagine running your own business without being able to be there. For those listening, I remind you of something that Pastor Nick just taught me. Show up and grow up. I don't want to hear from anyone. I'm talking to y'all out there in TV land too. I don't want to hear like, I support Israel. I'm way behind you guys. You're so far behind me that we can't even see you. This has been the loneliest time in modern Jewish history. Everyone walked around saying, never again. By the way, let me clarify what that meant. Because it was my teacher, Rav Meir Kahana, and the Jewish Defense League who popularized that slogan, late 60s through the 70s. Never again never meant, never again would there be a Holocaust. Never meant that. But it meant never again would there be a Holocaust and we would remain silent. And I have to tell you, in the last 16 months, in some locations there have been crickets. I came and asked everyone 6 months ago to start sending emails to your elected officials. To the best of my knowledge, this is the only congregation that did it. Because you all sent me kind of a proof text. Since I don't know grammar in English or Hebrew, it was a little tough for me. But you guys, it doesn't have to be, you don't need to wordsmith it. You see what your government can do when no one's watching them. And guess what we just found out in the last 48 hours? You know, there were all these demonstrations in Israel demanding that my government make a deal. And by the way, the pressure should have been on Hamas, not on the government of Israel. This is one time I have to say, I don't think Netanyahu did anything wrong at all. And I noticed from watching the footage, they've got these amazing sound systems and they're all organized. And I have to tell you, coming from a background in street demonstrations and riots, rarely are you that far prepared in advance that you've got all these pre-made signs and things. Rarely do you have sophisticated sound systems. And guess where they got the money from? Have you all heard anything about U.S. aid recently? Surprise, surprise. And I just before we came over at Pastor Nick's house, I was listening to a report on the news in Hebrew that seems to be uncovering that in December 2023, when we already had Hamas on the ropes, the American government sent them a huge amount of aid. And again, remember, the American government has been pressuring, that's the other thing, by the way, in my non-negotiation plan. No electricity, no water, no food. American troops didn't supply that in Iraq and Afghanistan. We are called upon to work at a higher level than anyone else in the world. Doesn't make sense. One of the questions I was asked, and this surprised me, because it's been 4 times since President Trump's announcement last Wednesday. 4 times, because most of the people who know me, and many of the people on live stream, know me because of my work over the years with the concept of Judah and Ephraim. Okay? So I've been surprised by the question, based on the Trump plan, do you think Israel will now be letting us come in? And they don't mean as visitors or on tourist visas. They mean to live. And I was stunned. And I said, why would we? Now understand the context of that. You should read the Israeli Declaration of Independence. We don't have a constitution, so you don't have to read that. Read the Declaration of Independence, and it tells you for whom the state of Israel was reconstituted in 1948. And it said the state of Israel was to be a homeland for the Jewish people. And by the way, there's a little phrase right next to it, and the ingathering of the exiles. But with the ingathering of the exiles, they didn't mean people outside of the Jewish world who have come to believe and understand that they too may be part of Israel. Okay? That wasn't on anyone's mind. When I, as a Jew, wanted to go on Aliyah, to move to Israel, I had to prove for several generations who my family was. I had to give them a copy of my parents' ketubah, their marriage certificate. License. No, license is something the Americans do. By the way, here's a little tidbit. Came up in conversation the other day. Do you know in Israel we don't have civil marriage? You can't go to a judge and get married. If you're Jewish, you have to be married by a rabbi. Muslim, an imam. Armenian Orthodox, and Armenian Orthodox priest, etc., etc., etc. So by the way, that doesn't work for everybody. So there are 2 main population groups that get married outside of the country and then come back to Israel. Same-sex couples and couples intermarrying. You know, Jewish-Israeli guy falls in love with his mother's caregiver from the Philippines, whatever, whatever, whatever. That's an aside. So, and understand something. If indeed people are from Ephraim, descendants spiritually, physically, or some other way, and will be brought home, it's not going to be the Knesset of Israel that's going to do that. There's not a single member of the Knesset who knows that Ephraimites exist anywhere in the world. Never heard of it. Years ago there was, Rabbi Yehuda Glick. And I know that Rav Glick knew about it because I'm the one who told him about it. Israeli society. We've got a real crisis in faith and leadership, but hopefully we'll work on it. It is amazing how we as a society pull together in the time of such crisis. 2 things I want to say, and then we'll open up for questions here. I don't know if we have the ability to take questions online. I don't know. We do. Okay, so those of you out there in TV land who have a question, type it up quick. And my dear friends in the back, by the way, tonight we've got the A team of the media team that's here with us. However, let me point out something. Every team within the media team is also the A team. This is just the best of the best. Okay, for those who want to contact me, people say, I want to contact you, I have questions. Write to me at kolyehuda.com. KOLYEHUDA.com. You can get messages to me. I respond. I'm one of those people who's obsessive about his email. If you want to help support what I do, deeply appreciated in advance. This is one of those moments I get nervous. I think I have to, remember, how to start CPR. 1 1000, 2 1000. By the way, I recently heard that you can do CPR to the tune of Staying Alive? Remember that? Staying Alive, you know. Staying Alive. Okay. Questions, anybody? Anybody out there in TV land have a question? Hi.
I have a question. Are there any good extra-biblical sources for the events of the Bible, for example, the life of David or Solomon?
Do we have sources that would show us? Okay, within the Jewish community, there is a group. I don't remember what they're called, but they've been tracking the Davidic lineage. I feel bad, but I don't remember. I mean, this, you know, pretty much I'm a mutt. You know, when I did a DNA analysis years ago, 2009, because everyone said, well, you're Ashkenazi Jewish through and through. And it turns out about 500 years ago, I had descendants on my mother's side, on my maternal side, that came from one of three communities. One was Bulgaria. I should remember this. Make a long story short, that's Sephardi. So I'm a little bit, so yeah. I'm not going to be the Davidic ruler. I'm sorry. You know, I could use the work now, to be honest with you. You know, until tourism picks up. Sorry. Anyone else? We have one over here.
Yeah, in your explanation, it sounded like United States has not really been supporting Israel as they should. It seemed to me that they have been supporting, the Gaza, people, and you don't want us to use Palestinians,
Right.
But can you explain more concerning our relationship with Israel? What is happening?
Okay. First of all, tremendous difference. Prior to the third week in January, the American government, the Biden administration, Biden-Harris, appeared to support Israel. In fact, when I was here, I remember saying this, that the Biden administration gives us with one hand and they take with two. Now, looking back on it, they give with one hand and they take back with five. So we were told, for instance, don't go into Rafah. The war has gone on for as long as it has because America has tied her hands. The anticipation of the Trump administration, and when on paper, when you look at his cabinet picks, it's like, and again, I'm only talking as an Israeli, although I still have the privilege of paying taxes to the United States government too. I am doubly blessed. I pay taxes to two countries every year. Okay, if you look at Secretary of State, if you look at the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, if you look at the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, I mean, this is the dream team. This is like, Michael Jordan, LeBron, you got everybody up there. However, Israel's interests and needs don't always or won't always coincide with America. It appears that the Trump administration will do things or will try to do things that are helpful to Israel. I'm a little hesitant in saying that because I can be back here in the summer standing up here once again telling you, well, it didn't work out the way I thought it would. But America has a real chance to truly be great. And I don't mean vis-a-vis Israel. You look at where all of our taxpayer dollars have gone, everything that's being exposed on a daily basis, and it's shocking and frightening. Anything else?
I got one from online. It's from Sahel Ben Yosef, and it says, Shalom Hanoch, Toda Rabbah, for your excellent talk this evening. Do you believe
that Gaza is a part of Israel?
Of course it is. Now, but that's the other thing that gets me. Today I'm reading, President Trump says, I am going to buy Gaza. This isn't Costco. From whom are you buying Gaza? Biblically, it's always been part of the land of Israel. But understand something. And it was supposed to be part of the Jewish homeland that the UN was voting on. But between 1948 and 1967, it was occupied by Egypt. By the way, no such thing as Palestinians until 1964. Then, in a blink of an eye, 3,000 years of something called Palestine. Fiction, total fiction. In 2005, Gaza became an independent Palestinian state. Understand something. By 2006, Hamas won an election, 2006, 2007, kicked out the so-called Palestinian Authority, and has been ruling ever since. Of course Gaza is part of Israel.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we should sell it to the Americans.
That's what I thought. So I have a comment, not so much
Sure.
a question, but there's a question. So about 2 days ago, I saw where Trump, I don't know what the question was to him, but I took notice of it. He said, if they do not give the hostages back, there's going to be big trouble for them. And he was very stern, and he said that 3 or 4 times. He said, did you see the last hostages? He said it was like the Holocaust happening over again. And I really believe Trump's roots run deep with the Jewish people. And I do believe that, yes, he's got his faults, like every man and woman and child and everybody in this earth. But I do believe that when he said it, it was the sternness, like, there's no way. If they don't let these hostages out, there's going to be big trouble. So,
Okay. A comment on the comment. I remember incoming President Trump saying that if all the hostages weren't released by the time of his inauguration, they would be held to pay. That was about 3 weeks ago. Okay. I want to know what the hell to pay could possibly be. Do you think America is going to bomb Gaza? No. Do you think America is going to send troops into Gaza? No. What is America going to do? Cut off their Israeli-supplied food, fuel, and electricity? No. So I don't know what he's going to do. And the thing about Trump, one of the best things about him is he's unpredictable. Understand, I remember Ronald Reagan. The Soviets were actually scared of him because they thought he was unbalanced enough, and he had one of those hot mic moments where he said, we have legislated to outlaw the Soviet Union, we begin bombing at noon. And I've always wondered, was that a mistake or not? But you know, Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall, it happened. So I am hopeful that President Trump will be able to do all that he wants to do, not only in Israel, but here in the United States of America. This is a real chance for America. Maybe the last gasp chance. Okay, we're not talking about American politics. Nathaniel.
Another online question is Israel ramping up their production of military equipment and munitions?
Absolutely.
If not today, then when?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is something over the last year, more and more Israeli industries have been getting major contracts from our government. You know, sometimes it may appear that our leadership, military and political, is too stupid to live, but actually from this we're learning. We are.
Hanoch, recognizing that Gaza belongs to Israel, but a little bit of ignorance on my part. If somebody breaks into my house, I will eventually evict them. What's preventing Israel from taking Gaza back and claiming it as their own?
The entire world, including the American government, turning against us? Yeah, that's what it is. That's what, and you know, and by the way, that's another thing from some of your other friends in Israel that are saying, we're resettling Gaza. No, we're not. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm telling you what it is. Do you know that Israel has already pulled its troops out of the Netzarim corridor, right in the middle of Gaza? That's where the Jewish communities had been, Gush Katif. Or a conversation that we had a number of months ago in Israel. Gee, is Israel now going to look at everything and say, we're going to do everything different? No, Israel's not pulling out of the Oslo Accords. We're still dealing with the so-called Palestinian Authority. By the way, there's a major offensive going on throughout the Palestinian Authority in areas that we're not supposed to be in. Area A. That's supposed to be total control, civil and security of the Palestinian Authority. We're in there operating every day because they've been building tunnels, they've been smuggling weapons from Iran through Jordan. This is a real issue for us. This is a real wake-up call. And I fear that I don't know if we're ever going to get those remaining hostages back. And I wish it would be an option to turn all of Gaza into a sand pile. I wish. And by the way, just one other additional thing. No one in the government of Israel sits with a Tanakh, a Hebrew Bible, and says, that's our next move. If it's Hashem's promised borders, Hashem will find a way to make it happen. In the same way that we all talk about Judah and Ephraim coming together, the prophets of Israel speak about it. This is a God thing. It's a God thing. Tim, how are you? Good to see you.
Great. It's good to be here. Good to see you too. I flew in all the way from Boston this afternoon just to be here.
God, your arms must be so tired.
They are.
I so
had to
appreciate
have a
it.
little nap. That's why I'm late. Two questions, kind of the same subject though.
Sure.
What happened to the philosophy of non-negotiation with and for hostages?
Okay.
And the second question is, how come we negotiate or exchange one Israeli for 100 of
Terrorists.
them?
Okay. The second one is the simpler one. That's what they demand, and that's what we give into. And if you want to look, we had a policy. If you remember, when the Air France plane was hijacked to Entebbe, that was 1976, by the way. Remember, you know, Entebbe. All right, that's a film you guys have to rent. I think it's called like Operation Thunderbolt or something. Anyway, by the way, the only Israeli killed in action in that amazing rescue was Yonatan Netanyahu, Bibi's brother. He was the commander. And if you're wondering why, and during that era, Rabin, our prime minister, said, we do not negotiate with terrorists. So who changed the policy? Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the one that did the last exchange. You have to understand, he's been our prime minister for more than 17 years. You thought Biden was hanging around, huh? Okay, just one quick American politics joke. There are times that I'll see something happening in America when I'm back home, and I'll wonder, like, is this real? You know, is it real or Memorex? What's going on here? Biden saying that he regrets having stepped down because he believes that he could have beaten Trump. Do you guys ever read things or hear things and then have music playing in the background? It's just me? Okay, so I'm hearing, one pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small. Jefferson Airplane? Okay, we obviously, Pastor Nick, we need a course in musicology here at Beit Tehila. I think maybe David Altman and I will guest teach this. But of course, you're welcome too. Nathaniel.
All right, another question online says, we know that Hamas said they will not release any more Israeli hostages. What is Israel's defense forces going to do next, in your opinion?
Okay. Someone, person or persons, will attempt to broker a new deal. What I think we should do is say, and first of all, I cannot believe that this ceasefire is supposed to last for 42 days, and we get back 33 people, of which we already know that 8 are bodies? Outrageous. Let's show the world and Gaza that we mean to be serious. The problem is, people are saying, my family members are dying. They're suffering. Other questions, please. There's a familiar face. Hi.
We've just gone through a long time for our election. We haven't heard anything about Israel elections in years. Are they overdue?
We're scheduled in 2026. I pray daily that will be sooner. Remember, as a parliamentary democracy, we can advance elections. Out of 15 plus years as an Israeli, I have already voted in 9 national elections. So we have a vibrant democracy. Let me just give an example. The military and political intelligence failures that led to this disaster. The second worst disaster in our history happened almost to the day, within one day, 50 years before, the Yom Kippur War, 1973. We had elections after that war, and Golda Meir was her party, the Labor Party, had the majority. She became prime minister again. However, by April, the Commission of Inquiry, and by the way, isn't it astounding? In Israel, they keep putting off starting a Commission of Inquiry. Like, let's keep it all buried. Golda Meir was acquitted by the Agranat Commission of any responsibility in the failures of our government. But she stood up and said, I am the prime minister, this happened on my watch, and she resigned. That's not happening now. So I hope we'll have a chance to vote again soon. Number 10, hopefully before year 16. Anything else?
I'm curious about, like, Saudi Arabia. Are they being carefully neutral? What's going on with the Houthis and Yemen and update?
Okay. Saudi Arabia and the Houthis are not connected. In fact, the Saudis have fought against the Houthis prior to this war. One of the big things that President Trump is going to push is to include Saudi Arabia in the Abraham Accords. That's a big focus of his. That's the agreements that we have with the United Arab Emirates and Morocco, Bahrain, etc. Whether a deal is possible or not, I don't know. They seem to be demanding that we commit to the creation of something called a Palestinian state. Anywhere closer than Greenland, I would not support it, obviously. So I don't know. I mean, the Saudis are viewed by the American government as a counterweight to Iran. And the hope is that all the countries in the Middle East will be standing against Iran. That's a big hope.
Just a reminder of my second question. Why do we trade 1 for 100?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I answered it.
No.
Oh, okay. That.
And
I'm sorry.
then, where are these terrorist exchange people? Where are they going? Are they going to end up killing more Israeli soldiers.
Many of them are in Judea and Samaria. Now understand something. There was a hostage exchange for terrorist prisoners in November of 2023. You know, a long time ago, within this war, we got out some of our hostages. Our security services have tracked it, and 82% of them, 82% have gone back to terrorism immediately. So that's a big problem. It all rests in the lap of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And the idea that we should somehow give 100 or 150 terrorists. Now these are people, could you imagine? We have people in Israel whose relatives were slaughtered, whose children were blown apart on buses, whose wives were shot and murdered, and you know that the terrorists who committed it have gotten out and they're living, let's say, where Tampa Bay is. They're living right nearby. So yeah, this is crazy. This is crazy. Why Israel agreed to it, I'll never understand. Never. Tom.
My question was, does the Israeli government really know how many hostages are left in the condition they're in, or?
That's kind of a closely guarded secret. They haven't announced it. By the way, all indicate, Israel will say, we don't know the situation of Kfir and Ariel Bibas, those two beautiful boys with the red hair, and their mom. Every indication that I've read indicates that they've been murdered. So it's a horrible thing. So we're talking about 60 hostages, but we don't know how many are alive. We don't know, and when I say alive, we don't know how many bodies were dragged into Gaza. Going once, going twice. Anyway, folks, please stay in touch. I look forward to seeing. One more question.
This is a change of pace from all the previous question asked. Do you know of any...
Speak up just a little louder, I'm sorry.
Do you know of any interesting archaeological sites or digs in Israel that are going on? Anything you've been keeping an eye on?
Wow. I'm a little out of step with many of the archaeological digs, primarily because they depend upon foreign volunteers. And now, recently, airlines have begun returning to Israel. Lufthansa, Swiss Air, Air France, etc. We've got United coming back soon. We've got Delta coming back about a month later. And I just saw that KLM is coming back June 1st. So that'll be great. Israel is not dangerous, but it's been hard to get there. Hard and incredibly expensive. Last chance. Anyone else online? Last chance. Well, thank you all so very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Pastor Nick. Thanks to the whole Beit Tehila team. And I look forward to, don't turn off yet just yet. I'm hoping to come back to the States sometime in June, probably for about 8 weeks of speaking, longer. Hopefully it won't be snowing in North and South Carolina. So if you guys want to host me, let me know. Shalom, bye-bye.